my goal by the end of this particular webinar is that you folks who are here and participating will have a much better understanding of how to write a really terrific pitch paragraph for your science fiction and fantasy novel, be it adults or young adults or middle grade, and that most of you will probably get your introduction to an agent via a query letter. Very few of you will actually meet one of us in person, and even rarer still is if you had met me in person that I actually took you on as a client. If I look at my client list, the good majority of my authors came my way literally because they sent me a query letter. Even Jamie Ford, who has literally been on the New York Times regular and extended bestseller list for 51 weeks now, which is just tremendously amazing. Even Jamie sent me a query letter to start, and so it kind of all starts there. And so if I can do anything in the SF&F realm to help people have much sharper, clearer, more interesting pitch paragraphs in this genre, then I know my job is done. So here we go. All right, first I have to. There we go. So I just explained why I did the webinar for science fiction and fantasy only. My goals for this workshop is I'm going to give you the top reasons, 10 reasons why science fiction and fantasy queries fail. I'm going to teach you how to nail the pitch blurb in your query letter. And then we're also going to talk about, and that's going to be the good majority of this webinar, and then we're also going to talk about why SF sample pages don't get full requests for full manuscripts. And then as part of this whole discussion, I will be talking about what agents and editors are looking for in terms of the pitch, the premise, and the writing, because it's all tied into nailing that pitch paragraph in your query letter. And one of the things that I often suggest to writers after I give a webinar like this is that before you begin a project, it's almost good to go through this exercise and see if you can create what would be the back cover copy for your novel even before you begin writing it. And I find that if people do that exercise, that helps them to zero in and focus on what that main element is that will be original and enticing for editors and agents who are looking for science fiction and fantasy types of manuscripts. So let's talk about the top 10 reasons queries fail when they're coming from SF&F writers. And some of them are specific to adults, and then some of them are specific to teen and children's, and I'll try and kind of highlight when they are. Reason number 10, generic descriptors of the story. This is going to be by far this is what we see as the biggest culprit, where we read it and it's just generic in terms of there's nothing about the world that's standing out to us, and there's nothing about the story that's standing out to us. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Reason number 9, overkill on world-building details and not enough about the story itself. I've seen queries from science fiction and fantasy authors, and this actually is true in both children's and adults, that they give me a whole page about the world that they've created. And then there's almost nothing about what the story is going to be within that world. And the trick in your pitch paragraph is to be able to nail both. You're going to have to be able to define in a very short space of time what the world is and then focus on what the story is about. Reason number 8, explaining that unlike already published science fiction, fantasy novels, your work has character development. I don't know where this comes from, but we see so many queries where they begin with the assumption that already published fantasy and science fiction novels don't have character development. Well, they must if they're going to be on the shelves and they're already published. So, or that they say it focuses on the characters and the characters' emotional complexity. And I'm like, no, well, any good story is going to have all of that. So probably not the best way to start your query letter. Reason number 7, popular trends such as vampires, werewolves, or zombies. And that's all there is to it. And there's no unique take on a vampire, werewolf, or zombie sort of world. This we see a lot in the children's realm, because anything that's vampires, werewolves, and zombies is going to be hitting in that fantasy and that urban fantasy realm in that particular genre. So you can have vampires, and I know everybody's going to say, well, gosh, is that done? Can I no longer have a vampire, werewolf, or zombie? No, of course you can still have that, but it had better be a really creative and different take, a vampire story I've never seen before. Otherwise, we're just seeing so many of them, it's not going to stand out. Reason number 6, no mention of or insight into the characters who will be driving the story. This kind of connects with reason number 10 and 9, where a lot of the authors of these queries for science fiction and fantasy are so focused on trying to make sure that the explanation of the world is clear, they completely forgot to give us any hint about who the characters are going to be. And sure enough, it's characters who draw us into a story.